We are headed into Civil War and World War III within the next 6 months to 2 years, and I am going to show you proof. Okay, I lied, it's not evidence, but it is very interesting and riveting analysis that I think you may find interesting. For our first exhibit, we have the date of World War I, 1914 through I think about 1918. What's particularly important is to look at both the Saturn, marked by this Reaper crescent next to the sun, and of course, Pluto, that we see both at 6 and 1 degrees Cancer respectively. Pluto transits around the zodiac every 248 years, and Kronos takes about 28 to 30 years to transit through the zodiac. By analyzing 30 years out of every 250 or so years, we can really gain incredible insight marking the passage and stages of each event. So it's very interesting to see that Saturn and Pluto have initiated a brand new karmic cycle that brought about the transformation of the world. For context, the last time we had a cycle like this was literally around March 21st, 2020, which not only activated the apocalypse cycle, but completely transformed a whole lot of operations in the world. Yes, by apocalypse cycle, I do mean death with Saturn, Pluto with pestilence, Mars with war, we'll talk about that one later, and Jupiter in its fall in Capricorn representing famine. So following that, we had food shortages during the 2021 and 2022 pestilence, had people sick with whatever pandemic was there. And of course, the tensions between Ukraine and Russia had kicked off at every stage every 2 years since 2020, when Mars subsequently conjuncted Kronos in Cap, Aqua, and Pisces. We also want to make the distinction that unlike 2020, which represented the collective organization of ruling territories and authorities after like several centuries, 1915 in Cancer of individual territories gaining stateship represents the beginning of these conflicts. Other things we want to look at are Neptune at 29 degrees Cancer, Uranus in Aquarius, Jupiter at the end of Taurus, and Mars making a smooth sextile to both Jupiter and Neptune. Boom, that brings us to our next exhibit, World War II. Now compared to World War I, where Neptune is at the end of Cancer, World War II is Neptune's progression up to the end of Virgo. Remember that for later. As we know, the events of World War II greatly influenced the events all around the world that we're experiencing now, especially the current Israel and Palestine conflict. And what do we see here? We see Saturn near Pluto getting ready to start a new cycle. But what we want to note once again is the individual basis of Saturn, this time with Uranus. Remember that for highlighting the birth of new states, new territories, and a change of who owns certain territories in light of colonialism and neocolonialism. We also want to take into account the god of war Mars transiting Hades, which is very telling. And that's what brings us to today, our second to last exhibit. Saturn, that met with Hades in 2020, is now getting ready to enact its Taurus Gemini 30 to 60 degree signature from Pluto as it brings the end of this world cycle, aka the end of the world as we know. That's why it's significant to look at the outer planets in these original to social areas, almost as if we're getting ready to change the landscape of how we understand what territories are what and how we identify ourselves. We also want to look at Neptune's position at Pisces, which in 6 to 7 months, or by February of 2025, the North Node will be in Pisces with Neptune and Saturn, kind of like how the North Node in Virgo was with Neptune in Virgo as well. So what does any of this have to do with Civil War? Well, earlier we were talking about the Neptune cycle with World War I and World War II. World War I, where it was 29 degrees Cancer, and World War II, where it was 27 through 29 degrees Virgo going into Libra. Well, as we can see, Neptune is 29 degrees Pisces, which in and of itself wouldn't really mean that much until I present to you our final exhibit. America's first Civil War. And you guessed it, before the first two Great Wars, Neptune was in Pisces. In fact, that was the very last time Neptune was in Pisces. And like I said, we would come back to Mars near Uranus of innovation and revolution, sparking a cycle with the god of war, which was heavily prevalent with the conjunction with Pluto in World War II. Well, oddly enough, Civil War was sparked with the Mars conjunction to Uranus in Gemini, while Neptune was in Pisces. And if you look today, Neptune is in Pisces and Mars is about to hit Uranus. In fact, if you look 2 years from now, Mars is going to be exactly conjunct Uranus in Gemini. So that means now, since it takes Mars 2 years to go around the zodiac, I just showed you where it is now, and the next time it's going to be back around here, just like in the first Civil War. So I can't really say these observations alone are evidence that war is imminent, but that's not to say that there aren't forces at play ready to trigger civil war for any reason at a moment's notice. Given that the sparking of this Mars conjunct Uranus and Taurus transit begins throughout the next few months, and elections are coming through, and Ukraine is still at war with Russia, and we have conflicts with Israel and Palestine, seeing all of these things give me the impression that